Hello, and welcome back to our introductory series on Classroom Sync, our add-on to sync data between your student information system and your Google Classroom learning management system. Um, so in our first video, we talked a bit about installing the application and the permissions that you'll need to provide and why we need to ask for those permissions from you as a user or an administrator. Then we talked in our next video about the one roster setup, the connection with your student information system, and how to obtain that information and provide it into Classroom Sync, where it is securely stored. And then in the immediately previous video, we talked about the class sync, which will export the class information from your student information system, will create the Google Classroom courses, and finally will sync the students and teachers into those created courses. So our last of the primary functionality videos will be talking about grade sync. So rather than moving information from your student information system into Google Classroom, we're now going to reverse it and go from Google Classroom back to your student information system. Now, this is different information. We're talking now about coursework or assignments and grades rather than the classes and rosters that move from SIS to Classroom. So we have selected for our one demo class here to sync grades. And so that will be included when we go to take each of these actions. So we're going to start again with an export, similar to what we did the last time by exporting classes. We can select specific Google Classroom coursework types, should we like, to exclude certain ones or others. We can also choose whether or not to include coursework that doesn't have a due date. That is treated a little bit specially and defaulted to the end of the grading period. So it is supported, but it is treated slightly differently, and that also impacts the filters that are applied on assignment due dates. So generally, the application is set up to just export and just work with really coursework that is coming due soon. In the next month or so, because that's when we expect many of the grades will need to come through. Should you want to have a more complete picture in your student information system at an earlier time, you're welcome to bump that up to whatever number you think is appropriate. The export's only going to include coursework from provisioned and active courses in the current term that are selected again, and only graded assignments. So there are ungraded assignments that can be created in Google Classroom, but we don't believe that there's currently a need for many schools to bring those back into your student information system because they're not graded to start with, right? So it shouldn't impact the final grades of your students. So we're going to go ahead and export the data here. Should take just a few moments to check each class in this case, or each course rather, in this case just one, for any assignments, and then apply a few transformations and filters based on what we provided to the options menu here. So we can see it's pulled out in a nicely formatted table again. We have some blank columns, which we expect will be filled as we perform our sync, just like last time. So we have kind of our source information, which comes from Google Classroom here. We know which SIS class we want this to go to based on our class mapping in the classes tab. And we have another selection option here where should some coursework come out and you want to choose to intentionally exclude it from the grade sync, you're welcome to do that, or from the coursework sync even, you're welcome to do that as well. So our next step is to create the line items, to create the assignments in the student information system. At this step, we have a couple of options related to line item categories or assignment categories, which can be used to organize your gradebook in most student information systems. So the standard way that this is handled through our sync is by assigning a category to each Google Classroom work type. However, if you want more granular control, you are welcome to use the Google Classroom grade category functionality. And so long as there is a matching assignment category in your student information system, the assignment will be assigned to that matching grade category rather than the default based on the type. So we'll give this a moment to go ahead and create these line items and if there are, or once we have the sync scheduled, I should say, if there are updates that are made to these line items, to these assignments, that will also be captured and copied across into your student information system. So anything that can be updated anyway will be kept in sync by the application. So that should be done here just momentarily. And we can see that we had 3 line items that were created. And now it's anticipated that our next step is going to be actually syncing the grades, which I agree. So we are going to jump to that step. And it would be the same. The menu here is the same that you would receive if you chose to enter the GradeSync sub menu and select Run down at the bottom on the GradeSync section. So what you can do in the GradeSync is sync your grades specifically for provisioned or active courses again, and just those that are selected for GradeSync. So the course needs to be selected and the coursework, the assignment needs to be selected. So if you disable at either of those levels, then the grades will not be copied across. We're also only going to copy across grades when they are returned to the students. So we're not going to be syncing draft grades or anything you're working on in the grade book before you're ready for the students to see it. It'll just be at that final status. Unless there is one additional feature available, which is the creation of placeholder grades. And the purpose of this is that there's a challenge we've encountered where if teachers are to modify a grade in the student information system for a specific student and a specific assignment before the sync ever occurs with Classroom Sync, then Classroom Sync will never in the future be able to modify that grade because the teacher essentially is the owner of that grade rather than the sync. And so by creating placeholder grades, the application then can make future changes as well, even if there are manual changes made. So if there are further updates to the gradebook in Google Classroom, Classroom Sync can then sync those across. The downside of this is that some student information systems we have seen show these placeholders based on the status that they're assigned as a missing assignment, which can cause some confusion. So we'll go ahead and run the grade sync here. One other item to note is that the grade sync will generally run up until the end of the term, the end of the grading period, but it also allows you to, if your student information system allows, to continue to sync the grades after the grading period ends if you're wrapping up some grading and the grade books are still open at that point. So you're welcome to specify a time period that makes sense for you. Now we are using some dummy classes and dummy data here, so I would expect, and we'll see, yeah, as I expected, there's a mismatch between those dummy students, or rather some of those dummy students in our Google Classroom don't exist in the student information system, which brings up a good point that our application expects that the username that you would use in your student information system matches the username or generally the email in Google Classroom. So if that's not the case, or if that's not always the case, you may run into some of these challenges. And ideally, you will go ahead and standardize those. But if that's not possible for any reason, feel free to reach out and we can see if we can work with you on that item. So that is the grade sync functionality. So we covered exporting, creating the line items, and running the submission or grade sync. We'll talk in the next video a bit about configuring and scheduling some of these functions so that you don't have to wait and watch them run, and can just let them sink in your sleep. Thanks for being with us. Bye.